Nadeem, I'll come to you right after Dr. Ali Hasnain has had his say. He's the HOD of Economics at LUMS, and then we'll hear from Dr. Nadeem.
Thank you. So I think I'll take a slightly different take to this, and thank you, Khurram Saab, for posing a question that perhaps, when I reflect on what Asma Jahangir Sahiba meant to many of us, she was the champion of the poor and the weak. I never had the privilege of meeting her, but that's what she meant to me and for millions of others. And so to think about what is the impact that these indicators that we speak about here in the TV on TV shows every night, what is the implication of these for the poor, and what is it that it misses out is an interesting conversation to have. So I'll put before you three things, and I've sort of brought some numbers to share with you. The first is that these numbers, pure economic indicators that we look at regularly, don't account for many real costs that society faces. And this is just bad. This is the bad practice of economics. It's not bad economics, because economics doesn't say pay attention to this cost, not to that cost. It's the bad practice of economics. So let me give you a few examples of this. The average Pakistani is losing 2.7 years of life expectancy because of smog. And Lahore has 5.3 years. All of us are losing 5 years of our lives because of the smog. That has to be accounted for in any decision-making, sensible decision-making that humans do. Deaths, and in the terms that economists are more familiar with, deaths and illnesses due to air pollution cost Pakistan 6.5% of GDP annually. And then water sanitation costs Pakistan $1 billion annually. The total economic cost of poor sanitation is about 4% of GDP. And those numbers manifest in more than 100,000 kids who die because of diarrhea and other water sanitation issues in this country. Now, any proper decision-making or policy planning in the country has to give a certain weight to these costs. And so that's the first thing that our economic indicators miss. The second is that government expenditures, so the government will state we've spent 2.5%, 2.8% of GDP on health and education, which, by the way, is a third less than what India spends on both of those things. But what it doesn't take into account is the efficiency of expenditure. So I'll give you two examples of that. One is from my own research about 10 years ago, where we went and we surveyed 1/3 of all basic health units in Punjab. These are very basic clinics that are run by the government across Punjab, so about 2,500 or so of them. We surveyed 850, and we went and paid them surprise visits 3 or 4 times. On average, 1/3 of clinics didn't have a doctor posted. So the government has set up a building, and there's a chowkidar and someone to clean the place up and a dispenser, but no doctor. And that's a waste of government resources. 1/3 of clinics had a doctor posted and who was present, and 1/3 had a doctor who was posted and drawing a salary but wasn't present at the clinic at a random time of visit. And their hours of opening for the clinics is just 8 to 2. So just 6 hours that you have to show up to work, and they're not there on a random visit. Now, they might have run late that day, or they might have been called in to the central district office. But the bottom line is that civilians or citizens were not getting their services, and so this is a waste. In education, 45% of rural children going to rural schools in class 5 don't have the ability to read English, Urdu, or their regional language at the class 2 level. So why are we spending our money? Why are we wasting their time and our money on sending them to school? That's the other thing. And finally, what these aggregate accounts don't really explain well or don't illuminate is the impact of inequality. Inequality in Pakistan compared to many other places is not off the charts. It's not as bad as it could be. But there are many types of inequalities, such as, for example, when you look at education again, the bottom quintile or the bottom 20% of the population has only 32% of their children going to school, while 88% of households in the top 20% are sending kids to school. And that's going to have an impact on their outcomes and then ultimately on economic growth over the next few decades. One of the things that Nadeem Saab mentioned, I don't know if he's still here, was street vendors and the fact that they require opportunity. And I think what we've had missing in this country is establishing property rights. Let's say that you have vendors who are on the road. In practice, the government won't do much about it most of the time, except when there's a drive to get rid of them. If we are to tolerate, as regulators, if we live in a world that already tolerates economic activity, then I think one way that the country can move forward is to start regulating and issuing property rights for them to show up and set up that stall. In the same way, we have settlements where people haven't had land rights, and to establish those property rights and to give them title to that land would be a way to unlock economic activity. We didn't get to it in the time that we had, but a fundamental need for Pakistan to really progress is to establish good property rights and contract enforcement. Without contract enforcement, no sophisticated economy can flourish. And in this country, until recently, I believe, the number of court cases has been greater than the number of tax filers. So without establishing the rule of law, you will not have your economy cannot progress without establishing rule of law. And therein lie many of the answers to what we face today. And this can go on to thinking about even just sort of something like the Fiscal Responsibility and Debt Limitation Act. Right? We put a law in place that said, here are bars we'll have to the amount of debt that we'll take. When government after government exceeded that limit, there's been no implementation of that law. You either repeal the law or you live within it. But in Pakistan, we live in a situation where neither happens. So I think one place where the themes of economists ally with the themes of lawyers is the establishment of rule of law. And I think that would help every citizen, really.